When the Bugatti Veyron shocked the world in 2005 with its W16 engine, many believed that nobody in their right mind had tried anything like it before. And yet, a decade earlier, in a small French workshop, a car had already been built with 16 cylinders, 80 valves, 4 Yamaha motorcycle engines joined into one unit, and performance capable of embarrassing the greatest supercars of the 1990s. It was called the Jimenez Novia W16, and it was the creation of one man, Ramon Jimenez, a former motorcycle racer and builder from the Avignon and Montaut area of France. This was not a project from a major manufacturer. It was not a billionaire's toy, and it was not a production car from a glossy catalog. It was a dream built by the hands of an enthusiast who wanted to create his own French supercar, one capable of standing beside the McLaren F1, the Dower 962, or the Bugatti EB 110. The Novia looked like a road-going interpretation of the Porsche 917. It weighed less than 900 kilograms, and according to claims, it could reach around 380 kilometers per hour. It sounded insane, but that exact kind of insanity is what makes this car one of the most fascinating forgotten stories in automotive history. The story of the Jimenez Novia began in the mid-1980s. Ramon Jimenez was not a typical industrialist, nor a designer trained by famous schools. He came from the world of motorcycles. He raced, he understood high-revving engines, and he had a strong connection with Yamaha. His fascination with performance, lightness, and the mechanical simplicity of motorcycles merged with his dream of building his own supercar. The main inspiration was the Porsche 917, one of the greatest legends of Le Mans. But Jimenez did not want to build a cheap replica or another kit car with someone else's engine. He wanted to create something of his own, something far more ambitious, a road car with racing car performance, but with a leather-trimmed interior, air conditioning, and enough equipment to use it beyond the racetrack. The name Novia is often translated as the Spanish word for fiancé or beloved, but it is also commonly linked to an anagram of the French word avion, meaning airplane. Both meanings fit perfectly, because Jimenez was almost married to this project for 10 years, and the car was meant to be as fast as an aircraft. Work on the car began around 1985 and lasted almost a decade. Jimenez worked almost without support from a major manufacturer, without a factory behind him, and without a large investor budget. He built the car in his own workshop, with help from a small team and his own determination. That makes the Novia far more interesting than a simple show prototype. In an era when the Ferrari F40, Jaguar XJ220, Bugatti EB 110, and McLaren F1 were pushing the limits of performance, this French builder decided to enter the same game on his own terms. His goals were very clear: a weight below 1,000 kilograms, power above 500 horsepower, and a top speed of at least 350 kilometers per hour. In the mid-1980s, those numbers were almost absurd for a road car. But Jimenez did more than simply imagine them. He built a machine that, according to many reports, could exceed them. The total cost of the project was estimated at around $855,000, a fortune for a private builder. The body of the Jimenez Novia was clearly inspired by endurance racing prototypes, especially the Porsche 917, Group C cars, and GT1 machines. The low nose, central cockpit, wide rear section, large air intakes, and aerodynamically focused silhouette made it look more like something from the Le Mans pit lane than a normal road car. Not everyone considered it beautiful. The large front headlights and massive rear gave it a raw, unusual character. But the Novia was never meant to be a classic Italian sculpture. It was meant to be fast, stable, and effective. The entire body was made from carbon fiber, which at the time was an extremely advanced and expensive solution. The car used an aluminum honeycomb structure, and according to some sources, the carbon body itself weighed only around 120 kilograms. That shows how seriously weight reduction was treated. With a total weight of around 890 kilograms, the Novia was lighter than most of its rivals and had an exceptional power-to-weight ratio. The dimensions also placed it firmly in the world of racing prototypes. The Novia was around 4,166 to 4,170 millimeters long, about 1,950 millimeters wide, and around 1,100 millimeters tall. Its wheelbase was about 2,540 millimeters, so it was compact in length, but very wide and extremely low. Entry was through upward opening doors, further strengthening the impression that this was something between a racing car and a futuristic supercar. The suspension used high-performance solutions, including independent double wishbones, adjustable ride height, and electronically assisted traction systems. The driver could adjust the ride height and character of the car depending on whether it was being used on the road or on the track. Michelin reportedly helped with tires and chassis setup, which shows that the project was taken surprisingly seriously. But the greatest legend of the Novia is its engine. Jimenez did not choose a ready-made American V8. He did not use a Ferrari Phi 12 or a Porsche unit. He did something far crazier. He joined four four-cylinder Yamaha FZR 1000 motorcycle engines to create his own naturally aspirated W16. Each of those motorcycle engines had 5 valves per cylinder, giving the full unit a total of 80 valves. Displacement was around 4,118 cubic centimeters, or just over 4.1 liters. The engine used 2 crankshafts, 8 camshafts, and a highly complex system to combine the output from both halves of the engine into a single drive. It was not a W16 in the same sense as the later Bugatti engine, but as a hand-built modular monster made from 4 motorcycle engines, it was absolutely unique. It is difficult to find anything else like it in the history of road cars. The performance of this engine was just as remarkable as its construction. It produced around 560 horsepower at 10,000 revolutions per minute, and about 432 newton-meters of torque at 7,500 revolutions per minute. For a naturally aspirated engine from the 1990s, that was an extraordinary figure, especially considering the displacement and the lack of turbochargers. Specific output was around 136 horsepower per liter, and some sources claim that with different camshafts and fewer restrictions, the engine could have reached around 609 horsepower at 11,500 revolutions per minute. Power was sent to the rear wheels through a 6-speed manual Hewland transmission, a gearbox with racing roots. With a weight of about 890 kilograms, the car had a power-to-weight ratio of roughly 1.6 kilograms per horsepower. That was better than many icons of the era, including the Ferrari F40, Lamborghini Diablo, and Jaguar XJ220. The claimed performance figures were staggering. Acceleration from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour was said to take around 3 to 3.2 seconds, while the standing kilometer took about 19 seconds. Top speed is most often quoted at around 380 kilometers per hour, though some reports mention 381 or even 383 kilometers per hour during tests on a closed road or runway. Other sources claim that on an airfield, the car reached around 355 kilometers per hour before running out of space. Jimenez believed the car could approach 400 kilometers per hour under the right conditions. Even if some of these figures should be treated with caution, the potential was incredible. After all, this was a privately built French supercar that could realistically approach the performance level of the McLaren F1. The interior of the Novia shows that Jimenez did not want to build only a stripped-out race car. The cabin was trimmed in cream Connolly leather, with bucket seats, harnesses, air conditioning, a cassette radio, and even small comfort features that might seem unnecessary in such a lightweight prototype. That detail matters, because the whole idea of the car was to combine racing performance with road usability. The Novia was meant to be a car you could drive to the track, but also use outside it without feeling like you were sitting inside a bare shell. Jimenez tried to combine the brutal mechanics of a motorcycle-derived W16 with the comfort of an exotic grand tourer. That is why the car had air conditioning, sound insulation, and leather. Even though every extra kilogram was the enemy, it shows the scale of his ambition. The Novia was not meant to be just an engine demonstration. It was meant to be a complete supercar. The plans were truly ambitious. Jimenez wanted not only to show the car at motor shows, but also to put it into very small-scale production and race it, possibly at Le Mans or in the GT1 category. The planned production price was around $300,000, which seemed attractive considering the technology, performance, and uniqueness of the car compared with the most expensive supercars of the period. There were even mentions of a more powerful version, with an engine enlarged to around 4.4 liters and up to 700 horsepower, as well as a cheaper V8 version that would effectively use half of the W16. Today, that sounds like fantasy. But in the 1990s, projects like this really were born in small workshops. The problem was that between a dream and production stand, homologation, crash tests, capital, service support, legal responsibility, and customer trust. And that is exactly what Jimenez lacked. The biggest obstacle was homologation. For the Novia to be legally sold, another example had to be built for crash testing and approval. For a major manufacturer, that would simply be part of development costs. For Ramon Jimenez, it meant building a second car with money he no longer had. The first prototype had already consumed almost all of his fortune. He looked for investors and tried to interest banks and industry partners, but he could not find the necessary funding. The project he had spent 10 years building with his own hands stopped just one step before the next stage. Without a second car, there could be no crash test. Without a crash test, there could be no homologation. Without homologation, there could be no production. And without production, there could be no entry into racing categories that required a road-going version. It was the classic tragedy of small supercar builders. Technically, you can create something astonishing, but industrially, you still need millions for paperwork and validation. Only one Jimenez Novia W16 was ever built. That makes it one of the rarest supercars of the 1990s. There was no production run, no customer list, no options catalog, and no real second-hand market. The car most likely remained in the hands of Ramon Jimenez or his family, while Jimenez Motor later changed direction and focused on laser and water jet cutting. That makes its current value very difficult to estimate, because the car almost never appears publicly for sale. But if it ever reached a major auction today, its value could be enormous. Considering its uniqueness, hand-built W16 engine, carbon body, performance figures close to the greatest icons of the era, and the story of one man's obsession, a realistic estimate could range from several $100,000 to well over $1 million. With the right documentation, presentation, and mechanical condition, it could be worth even more. This is not an ordinary car. It is the only surviving artifact of an incredibly ambitious dream. Today, the Jimenez Novia W16 remains one of the most extraordinary forgotten supercars in the world. It did not win Le Mans. It did not enter production. It did not create a brand as famous as Pagani or Koenigsegg, but it has something that no huge budget can buy: the authentic obsession of its creator. Ramon Jimenez joined 4 motorcycle engines into one 16-cylinder machine, built a carbon fiber body, created a car lighter than most of its rivals, and achieved performance figures that are still impressive today. The Novia was imperfect, difficult to homologate, too expensive, and too complicated for one man. But that is exactly why it is so fascinating. It belongs to an era when visionaries truly believed they could build the future in their own garages. The Jimenez Novia never became the French McLaren F1. It became something rarer, a legend known only to those who truly love the wildest chapters of automotive history.